Beneath the ceremonial grandeur, beneath the carefully polished image of crowns, castles, and pageantry, there lies another story. It is not the one told in schoolbooks or official documentaries. It is not the one printed neatly in commemorative programs during royal weddings or jubilees. It is the story that lurks in locked rooms, sealed vaults, and unmarked boxes, where pages of forgotten correspondence and fragments of hidden lives wait quietly, away from the light of public view. This is the world of the Windsor Archives, sometimes called the Royal Archives, a place where the monarchy has guarded its past for centuries. And like every locked door, it invites the same question: what lies behind it? History is often written by those in power, shaped to highlight victories and virtues while softening or burying the uncomfortable truths. With monarchies, this curation is not simply about keeping the past tidy. It is about survival itself. A throne is not made of wood or gold. It is built from stories, from the image of dignity and continuity. But what happens when those stories are threatened? When documents reveal scandal, disgrace, or influence far greater than the public ever imagined? The result is a shadow history, one locked away not because it never happened, but because it happened all too clearly. Imagine opening a vault and finding letters that contradict official accounts, or discovering proof of heirs erased from succession lists, or secret communications that steered wars and diplomacy from behind the scenes. These are not the fantasies of conspiracy, but the possibilities created when secrecy becomes an institution's strongest tradition. For centuries, scholars, journalists, and ordinary people have wondered what the Windsor vaults still conceal. The small cracks that have appeared, a memoir, a misplaced letter, a leaked detail, hint that behind the curtain lies a version of royal history far more complex and far more human than we are told. The fascination lies not only in scandal, but in the implications. If even one hidden story were revealed, it could alter how we view the monarchy's role in shaping not just Britain, but the world. These archives could contain evidence of personal struggles, political maneuvering, or ethical compromises that shift our understanding of history itself. And that is why the question of secrecy matters so much today. In an age when transparency is demanded from every institution, how long can such secrets remain in the shadows? This is not about tearing down tradition for the sake of it. It is about asking what it means to know the full truth. When you peel back the layers of myth, when you venture into the locked vaults of Windsor, you do not just find kings and queens. You find people. And in those people, you may find the echoes of decisions, desires, and deceptions that changed the course of nations. Welcome to our channel, Words of Time. In this video, we are diving deep into the mysteries of the Windsor vaults, the hidden stories that the monarchy has carefully guarded, and the questions about how long these secrets can remain sealed. Stay with us as we explore the cracks in the facade, the whispers of disgrace, the unseen architects of power, and finally, the uncertain future of royal secrecy. Imagine a hidden chamber deep within the grounds of Windsor Castle, a place where light rarely enters and only a small circle of trusted individuals are ever allowed to walk its corridors. Behind locked doors lie vaults that are not filled with gold or jewels, but with something far more powerful: secrets. These are the archives of the British monarchy, a vast collection of letters, diaries, official documents, and private communications, some stretching back centuries. To most of the world, they are unseen, inaccessible, and carefully guarded. And yet, what they hold could reshape the way people view history itself. The idea of such a vault is almost cinematic, but it is very real. While the public is given curated glimpses of royal history through museums, biographies, and authorized publications, the truth is that the most revealing pieces never see daylight. They are cataloged and shelved, guarded by archivists who understand the weight of their contents. If even a fraction were revealed, they might not just embarrass individuals long dead, but could cast doubt on the very foundations of royal authority. Consider the sheer scale of the collection. The archives reportedly contain hundreds of thousands of documents, letters written in trembling hands, pages stained with ink blots where emotions spilled too quickly, and official files marked with the seals of prime ministers and foreign leaders. Within those papers could lie details of secret treaties, private negotiations, or admissions of failures that were never meant for public knowledge. History, after all, is often written by the winners, and in the case of monarchy, by those who control the narrative most tightly. One of the most persistent rumors concerns forgotten heirs. Imagine the implications if documents were uncovered showing that a child once existed who had a legitimate claim to the throne but was hidden away, erased from the public record for reasons of political expediency. Perhaps a royal affair produced an heir whose existence was too scandalous to acknowledge. Or perhaps during times of war or political upheaval, a decision was made to quietly remove an individual from the line of succession. Official histories tell neat stories, but reality is rarely neat. In those vaults, the tangled threads of lineage could reveal a truth so disruptive that even today it might shake the monarchy. Then there are the love affairs, whispered about in drawing rooms and occasionally hinted at in biographies, but often left vague for lack of evidence. What if those archives contain letters between monarchs and lovers who were never officially acknowledged? What if private diaries revealed the intensity of passions carefully hidden from the public eye? Scandalous relationships could explain sudden political decisions or unexpected alliances. They could also expose how much of what we see as calculated strategy was, in fact, driven by human emotions. But it is not only personal scandals that could be hidden there. The monarchy has long been intertwined with the machinery of government, from colonial policies to wars fought in faraway lands. The vaults might contain correspondence showing the crown's direct involvement in decisions that historians have attributed solely to ministers. The image of a politically neutral monarchy could crumble if evidence surfaced of private influence exerted behind closed doors. Even a single letter suggesting encouragement of a controversial policy could transform public perception of royal impartiality. There is also the question of what these vaults might reveal about alliances with other powerful families. Royals married across Europe for centuries, weaving a web of kinship that tied together kingdoms and empires. But marriage was often just the surface layer. Beneath it were personal bargains, promises, and exchanges of favors that never reached official treaties. Hidden in the archives could be accounts of secret negotiations where a monarch promised support, financial or military, in exchange for concessions that were never recorded in the open. These would not simply be historical curiosities, but revelations that could alter how we understand European politics of the past 200 years. The secrecy itself is telling. If these documents were harmless, they would have been shared long ago, displayed in museums, or printed in academic volumes. Their very concealment suggests sensitivity. Generations of monarchs have deemed it safer to lock them away than to risk the storm of their disclosure. Archivists and advisors know that even centuries-old scandals can have modern repercussions. In a world where reputation is tied to survival, the exposure of hidden truths could weaken the symbolic authority that monarchy relies upon. Consider, for example, the reign of Edward VIII, whose abdication was framed as a matter of love for Wallis Simpson. The official version is a story of romance and sacrifice, but what if the archives contained evidence of other pressures, such as political connections with hostile powers or financial mismanagement that made him untenable as king? Historians have speculated, but speculation pales in comparison to written proof. A single memorandum or private letter could confirm suspicions that the official story is only part of the truth. There are also darker possibilities. Wars always leave shadows, and the British monarchy spanned some of the most turbulent centuries of conflict. Letters written during the colonial era might reveal acknowledgments of atrocities that were later denied. Documents might show knowledge of suffering that was deliberately ignored to maintain political stability. For a monarchy that prides itself on tradition and continuity, the exposure of such complicity could be damaging beyond repair. The human element makes the archives even more intriguing. Behind every crown and title was a person with fears, ambitions, and regrets. Diaries could show kings and queens expressing doubts about their roles, questioning their faith, or resenting the weight of expectation. Such honesty would make them more relatable, but might also undermine the image of unshakable strength cultivated in public. The monarchy thrives on ceremony and the appearance of certainty. Vulnerability, while human, has always been carefully filtered before being presented to the public. Even the correspondence between monarchs and their advisors could carry immense significance. Private notes might reveal disagreements that never appeared in official records, showing that unity was more fragile than it seemed. They might also expose manipulation, where advisors shaped decisions through selective presentation of facts. For historians, such documents would be invaluable in reconstructing the true decision-making processes of past reigns. For the monarchy, however, their release could show weakness or inconsistency that undermines the carefully built myth of continuity. The archives are also said to contain sensitive material about relationships with religious institutions. For centuries, the crown and the church were deeply entwined. Secret communications could show compromises or conflicts that were concealed to maintain public confidence. Perhaps monarchs admitted to doubts about doctrines they publicly defended, or perhaps they used the church as a tool of influence while claiming neutrality. These details, locked away for generations, could shift how we understand the crown's spiritual role in British life. All of this raises the question of ownership. Who truly controls history? The people who lived it, the institutions that preserve it, or the public who deserves to know it? The monarchy has always maintained that privacy is necessary, but critics argue that by hiding documents of national importance, the crown is shaping history to protect itself. The tension between transparency and secrecy lies at the heart of the Windsor vaults. There are whispers, too, of material that connects to events within living memory. Some believe that correspondence between members of the royal family and political leaders of the 20th century remains locked away to prevent embarrassment. Decisions about war, decolonization, or relations with controversial regimes may have been influenced by royal opinion in ways that would shock the public. While ministers take responsibility in official records, private letters might show that advice or encouragement came from behind palace walls. And what about the personal tragedies kept out of sight? Families often conceal their most painful secrets, and the monarchy is no different. Records of illnesses, breakdowns, or concealed births could reveal a history far less polished than the public image suggests. In the past, children with disabilities were sometimes hidden from view, their existence barely acknowledged. If such stories lie in the vaults, they remind us that the royal family, while extraordinary in status, was still subject to the same complexities and cruelties of human life. The vaults may also hold evidence of how the monarchy responded to scandal. Each crisis faced by the crown was managed carefully, but private notes might reveal the panic, anger, or fear that accompanied public statements of calm. For example, during moments of constitutional crisis, such as disputes with parliament or unpopular marriages, the archives could contain raw expressions of frustration that never reached the public. These insights would not only humanize the monarchy, but also strip away the illusion of effortless composure. One can imagine how researchers would approach such a treasure trove if ever given access. Each document would be a thread, and together they could weave a tapestry that is richer and more complex than the official version. The challenge would not be in finding scandals, but in piecing together how they fit into the larger story of power, survival, and image. For centuries, the monarchy has endured not because it was flawless, but because it controlled the narrative. The Windsor vaults hold the fragments of the untold story, and it is a story that could be far more compelling than the polished versions taught in schools. The secrecy fuels speculation, and speculation is often more powerful than fact. As long as the vaults remain closed, people will imagine the worst, conjuring images of affairs, betrayals, and hidden heirs that may or may not exist. But even if the truth is less dramatic, it is no less important. Understanding how decisions were made, what was hidden, and why certain stories were told instead of others can change the way we think about history itself. The archives do not just contain secrets of individuals, but secrets of a system designed to preserve itself at all costs. Perhaps the greatest irony is that the very act of hiding these materials ensures their importance. If they were meaningless, they would have been released. Their concealment creates an aura of mystery, inviting endless theories about what they contain. Whether it is letters of love, admissions of failure, or evidence of manipulation, the locked vaults of Windsor symbolize the tension between truth and myth. They remind us that history is not just about what happened, but about what we are allowed to know. If those vaults were ever opened, the world might not simply learn new facts, but confront a new understanding of monarchy itself. The royal family has always relied on a mixture of tradition, symbolism, and selective storytelling to maintain its role. To expose the unfiltered reality would be to risk undoing centuries of careful construction. That is why the vaults remain locked, and why they will likely stay that way for generations to come. The question, then, is whether history belongs to the people or to the crown. Should the public have the right to know everything about the institution that has shaped their nation, or should some truths remain buried for the sake of stability? The answer may never be clear, but the existence of the Windsor archives ensures that curiosity will never fade. The vaults stand as both a physical and symbolic reminder that behind the grand ceremonies and public appearances lies a hidden world of secrets, waiting to be told, if only the locks were ever opened. The locked vaults of Windsor may remain sealed, but history has a way of escaping the boundaries that people try to place around it. However carefully constructed a facade may be, cracks appear, and through those cracks, fragments of truth have slipped into the open. These glimpses are rare, often accidental, and sometimes born from the courage of individuals who defied the rules of silence. Yet even these small pieces, when gathered and studied, can suggest a picture far more complicated than the official histories allow. There have been moments when personal correspondence was preserved not by intention but by oversight. Letters written in haste, stored in private collections, and later sold or donated have sometimes revealed personal feelings of monarchs that contrast sharply with their public image. A ruler praised for calm restraint may, in private notes, show impatience, anger, or despair. A monarch celebrated for piety may, in secret exchanges, reveal doubts or hypocrisy. These discoveries unsettle the carefully cultivated image and suggest that what is hidden behind the vault doors may be even more startling. Memoirs have also been a source of accidental revelation. Servants, aides, and courtiers who lived close to royal households occasionally left behind accounts of what they saw. Some were loyal to the end, recording only flattering details, but others, whether out of bitterness, honesty, or a desire to set the record straight, admitted to behaviors and secrets that the monarchy would rather have forgotten. These memoirs, when published generations later, became small windows into a world otherwise closed off. A careless anecdote about a whispered conversation, a reference to a door locked at certain hours, or an unexplained disappearance of a family member has often fueled speculation about what the official story left out. There are also leaks that occurred not through intent, but through simple accident. In archives not as carefully guarded as Windsor, documents have sometimes been misfiled or forgotten. Scholars searching for one thing stumble across another, and suddenly a detail emerges that reshapes understanding. A single line in a diary or a marginal note in an official letter can raise questions that echo for decades. The significance of these finds lies not always in their dramatic nature, but in their subtle ability to suggest that the official narrative is incomplete. Take, for example, the sudden rediscovery of letters written during the reign of George III. Long after his time, papers surfaced that revealed the extent of his illness and how it was managed by those around him. The official narrative had portrayed him as erratic and difficult, but the documents showed a man struggling against a condition that neither he nor his physicians fully understood. The revelation humanized him, but also highlighted how much had been hidden from the public in order to protect the stability of the crown. Another instance came from the abdication crisis of Edward VIII. While the public story emphasized romance, later revelations through private notes and correspondence suggested that there were concerns about his political leanings and associations. The release of certain documents, long after his departure, hinted at sympathies and connections that were not part of the carefully managed story told at the time. The cracks in the facade did not fully open the vault, but they were enough to suggest that deeper layers of truth were concealed. Even small, seemingly trivial details have sometimes shifted perception. A diary entry about a royal's daily routine, preserved accidentally, might appear harmless. Yet when placed alongside other records, it can reveal patterns. Meetings that were not supposed to happen, absences explained away in public, but documented in private. These details, when pieced together, form an image that contrasts with the grand portraits displayed in palaces and museums. They remind us that monarchy, despite its claims to dignity and tradition, is lived by individuals whose lives are messy, emotional, and often inconsistent with the idealized image presented to the world. The courage of individuals has also played a role. There have been courtiers and staff who, at great personal risk, chose to speak. Sometimes it was out of frustration with hypocrisy, sometimes out of loyalty to truth rather than to institution. Their accounts, often dismissed at first as gossip, later gained credibility when supported by other evidence. These voices, faint at first, become louder when history catches up with them. They show that even within the tightest circles of control, not everyone is willing to remain silent forever. One of the most telling examples lies in the gradual revelation of hidden family members. In the 20th century, it emerged that two relatives with severe disabilities had been institutionalized and kept from public knowledge, their existence scarcely acknowledged even within the family. For years, this truth remained buried, but when discovered, it raised uncomfortable questions about image and compassion. The monarchy, which had cultivated a picture of unity and strength, suddenly faced scrutiny for the ways it had concealed its own vulnerabilities. Such revelations may not have come directly from the Windsor vaults, but they serve as proof that cracks can and do appear. Leaks sometimes come not from written records, but from human memory. Aging courtiers, long retired from service, occasionally let slip details in interviews or conversations that were not meant for publication. Journalists, ever attentive, have gathered these fragments, and while they cannot always be confirmed, they add texture to the picture. A mention of a sudden disappearance, a hint of an affair, or a comment about royal tempers. All of these small details, when pieced together, suggest a far richer and more human story than the polished versions told officially. The very process of controlling information often creates suspicion. When files are withheld or destroyed, people naturally wonder why. When archives release thousands of documents but quietly exclude others, those exclusions become the focus of speculation. Sometimes the absence of a file speaks louder than its contents ever could. Historians, trained to look for patterns, notice gaps in the record. When every year of correspondence is accounted for except one, questions multiply. The missing pieces become as significant as those preserved. Accidental discoveries continue to shape understanding even in modern times. A misplaced letter, a forgotten photograph, or a marginal note in a ledger can surface unexpectedly and suddenly reveal a side of monarchy not previously known. In some cases, these fragments appear in auctions, sold from private estates of individuals who once served at court. In others, they are unearthed in libraries far from Windsor, where a copy or draft survived unnoticed. Each discovery reinforces the idea that history cannot be fully contained, no matter how tightly it is guarded. These cracks in the facade remind us of an important truth. Institutions, however powerful, cannot control every detail forever. People talk, papers survive, and accidents happen. While the Windsor vaults remain locked, the fragments that escape show us enough to imagine what might lie inside. And often, the imagination fueled by these glimpses is more powerful than the official narrative itself. When we connect all these scattered pieces, memoirs, leaks, accidents, and revelations, we begin to see the shape of a monarchy that is both more human and more flawed than the official histories suggest. Far from being the perfect embodiment of tradition and continuity, the royal family appears as a group of individuals struggling with pressures, temptations, and contradictions. Their power lay not only in their crowns, but in their ability to control what the public saw. And yet, no matter how strong the facade, the cracks continue to widen. The locked vaults of Windsor may never be opened to us. But the cracks remind us that truth has a way of finding its path. Even the most carefully guarded secrets cannot remain hidden forever. The story of monarchy is not just one of ceremony and control, but also of leaks, slips, and fragments that challenge the image we are meant to believe. In those cracks lies the possibility of a different history, one that belongs not to the powerful alone, but to everyone who dares to look beyond the curtain. The cracks in the facade leave us with fragments, but through those fragments we begin to sense shadows of something far larger. Once we have glimpsed private letters, accidental leaks, or memoirs that let slip details the monarchy never intended to be known, we cannot help but wonder what lies beyond. If minor oversights and scattered anecdotes already shift the public image, then the contents of the sealed Windsor vaults must hold truths so volatile they could not risk even partial release. And among the most unsettling possibilities are the whispers of disgrace, stories of hidden marriages, illegitimate children, and choices so reckless they might have altered the very line of succession. Every monarchy depends on the appearance of legitimacy. The crown does not rest on military force alone, but on the idea of an unbroken, rightful line passed from one sovereign to another. If that line is shown to be tainted or uncertain, the entire structure can wobble. This is why rumors of secret marriages or concealed offspring strike so deeply. They are not simply scandals of the heart, but threats to the idea that the throne is occupied by its rightful heir. There have long been suspicions about liaisons between monarchs and individuals far outside the official dynastic circles. Affairs themselves were not unusual. Monarchs, like anyone else, experienced desire, loneliness, and moments of weakness. But while courtiers might have turned a blind eye to flirtations, the real danger came when those encounters produced children. If letters hidden in the vaults revealed that a king had fathered offspring who were spirited away to obscurity, the implications would be seismic. It would raise questions about whether the reigning monarch, or even several generations of monarchs, truly belonged on the throne at all. Consider the possibility of a king in the 18th century or 19th century who, while married to a queen chosen for political reasons, also married in secret a woman he loved. Such a marriage, even if unrecognized by the church or state, would complicate the legitimacy of his heirs. If a child of that union existed, even if hidden away and erased from the record, that child could theoretically hold a stronger claim than the public heir. This is the sort of revelation that would not simply tarnish reputations, but could unravel centuries of authority. The monarchy could not afford to let such a truth emerge, and so the evidence, letters, witness statements, even baptismal records, would be buried deep in the vaults. The question of illegitimate children has always hovered at the edges of royal history. Rumors have followed monarchs such as Charles II, who openly acknowledged several illegitimate sons and daughters, but carefully separated them from succession. Yet what of the children not acknowledged? The ones quietly placed in country estates or sent abroad under new identities. If documents in Windsor prove the existence of forgotten offspring who were closer in blood to the throne than the official heir, the implications would ripple far beyond personal scandal. Entire reigns could be cast as historically unstable, built on concealment. Even more delicate are the cases of monarchs whose personal lives contradicted the public image of stability. There have been hints that certain sovereigns engaged in relationships that, if known in their own time, would have shocked the public or challenged the authority of the crown. While modern readers might view private love lives with sympathy, the rigid moral codes of earlier centuries would have made such revelations intolerable. Diaries or letters preserved in the archives may well record passions, confessions, or even reckless promises that never saw the light of day. The danger of disgrace is not limited to the bedroom. There are decisions made in moments of weakness that, if revealed, could topple reputations of entire reigns. A letter agreeing to terms with a foreign power that later became an enemy, or correspondence suggesting financial mismanagement of royal estates, could turn a monarch remembered as wise into one remembered as corrupt or incompetent. Even the possibility of betrayal, secret talks with rivals, half-promises made and then broken, would be enough to damage the aura of impartiality and stability on which the crown relies. It is worth remembering that monarchy thrives not only on continuity, but on myth. The myth presents sovereigns as steady hands guiding the nation, sometimes stern, sometimes benevolent, but always dignified. Whispers of disgrace puncture this myth by revealing not just flaws, but decisions that directly endangered the throne itself. To admit these truths would be to strip away the protective cloak of tradition and reveal human error, selfishness, and recklessness at the heart of the crown. There are stories, passed down in hushed tones, of letters hidden because they spoke too plainly of scandal. One such tale speaks of a queen who may have written to a lover, expressing not just affection, but fear that she carried his child. If true, such a letter could have destabilized the dynasty. Was the heir she bore truly of royal blood? Was the line of succession secured by secrecy rather than truth? Whether or not such a letter exists, the possibility is haunting enough to explain the intense secrecy of the Windsor archives. Other accounts suggest moments when marriages were arranged not purely for alliance, but to cover over previous indiscretions. A union quickly announced after whispers of pregnancy, or a sudden betrothal designed to silence rumors, may have been the outer shell of a deeper story hidden in private correspondence. If documents reveal that such marriages were negotiated under duress, or that offspring born soon after a wedding were not the biological children of the official husband, then much of what we think of as legitimate royal succession becomes an elaborate performance built on concealment. Beyond questions of heirs, the archives may hold stories of shocking behaviors that contradict the image of nobility. Tales of cruelty toward servants, uncontrolled tempers, or extravagant indulgences at times of national hardship might lurk in those pages. History books smooth over these details, preferring to emphasize stability and dignity. But personal letters written in moments of anger or despair rarely conceal the truth. A king who raged at his staff or squandered funds during famine would appear very different from the solemn figure presented in official portraits. The archives may also contain decisions that were buried not because they were immoral in a personal sense, but because they were politically disastrous. A monarch who made a secret agreement with a rival power might have placed the nation at risk, yet the cover-up ensured that he remained celebrated for prudence. If uncovered today, such evidence would reframe entire periods of national history, suggesting that victories were won not through wise leadership, but in spite of reckless mistakes. Whispers of disgrace linger, too, in stories of heirs who were never allowed to ascend. There are hints of princes or princesses quietly sidelined because they were deemed unstable, unfit, or inconvenient. Official records might say they died young, but what if they lived long lives in obscurity, their true claims erased? Such possibilities explain why the vaults must remain locked. To admit that rightful heirs were deliberately erased would be to expose the monarchy as a system that survives not by sacred right, but by manipulation and concealment. The danger of these revelations is not limited to the past. If documents prove that past monarchs manipulated succession, concealed heirs, or allowed illegitimate children to vanish into secrecy, then what confidence can the public have that the current line is entirely pure? The stability of the institution depends on belief. Once belief falters, the institution wavers. This is why disgrace, whispered or proven, is so threatening. It does not simply tarnish individuals long dead. It casts doubt on the very idea of monarchy itself. We have already seen how small cracks in the facade, letters, memoirs, accidental leaks, can hint at deeper truths. Whispers of disgrace take those hints further. They suggest that the most shocking secrets, the ones capable of rewriting entire chapters of history, are locked away not out of privacy alone, but out of survival. The vaults of Windsor are not just archives, they are barricades against collapse. Behind their locked doors lies evidence of passion, betrayal, recklessness, and decisions that could have toppled thrones. Perhaps the most haunting thought of all is that some of these stories may never come to light. Papers can be destroyed, evidence burned, and accounts erased. But history has a stubborn way of resurfacing, whether through forgotten letters in distant libraries or descendants who, knowingly or unknowingly, carry traces of hidden bloodlines. Each whisper of disgrace keeps alive the suspicion that what we know is only half the story. And so the monarchy endures, not just as a symbol of continuity, but as a structure balanced precariously on secrets too dangerous to reveal. The whispers of disgrace cast doubt on the purity of succession and the personal lives of monarchs, but the secrets buried in the Windsor vaults do not end with affairs, hidden children, or reckless choices. If anything, those scandals are only the surface layer of a much deeper and more complex story. For behind the glitter of crowns and the scandals of romance lies another world, one where power itself was shaped not on the throne alone, but in shadowy agreements, hidden financial transactions, and quiet interventions in global events. These are not the secrets of passion, but the secrets of strategy, and in many ways they are far more dangerous. They suggest that the monarchy was not merely a passive symbol of tradition, but an active architect of political reality. The official image has always been that the monarchy stood above politics, a neutral guardian of the nation whose authority was ceremonial. Yet the existence of such vast archives calls that very idea into question. Why keep locked away not only family scandals, but also vast records of communication between sovereigns and ministers, between royals and foreign powers, between crown and church? The answer may be that the monarchy was never as neutral as it appeared. Documents hidden from public sight might reveal direct influence on wars, colonies, financial systems, and even the delicate game of intelligence gathering that stretched across continents. When one considers the age of empire, the monarchy was not simply a ceremonial figurehead, but the symbolic head of a global system stretching from the Caribbean to India, from Africa to the Pacific. Publicly, ministers and parliaments debated the administration of this empire. Privately, however, it is likely that monarchs were involved in discussions never meant for public record. Imagine a king receiving confidential letters from a governor warning of rebellion, or a queen writing to a foreign cousin about the risks of supporting one alliance over another. If these letters exist, they reveal that decisions shaping millions of lives were influenced by conversations far from Parliament's chamber. One of the most potent areas where the unseen hand of monarchy may be revealed is finance. Royal estates generated immense wealth, but beyond the official accounts lies the question of private investments and hidden funds. Documents locked in Windsor may contain evidence of secret loans to political allies, covert stakes in colonial companies, or hidden influence over trade monopolies. Such dealings, if exposed, would show that monarchs had material interests in the expansion of empire and the exploitation of resources, interests they could never admit publicly while presenting themselves as guardians of the nation. The same secrecy extends to intelligence operations. Long before modern intelligence agencies existed, monarchs relied on networks of informants, spies, and messengers. It is entirely possible that within those archives are detailed accounts of secret missions carried out not in the name of Parliament, but in the service of the Crown itself. These could include instructions to agents operating in rival courts, bribes to secure loyalty from foreign leaders, or payments to silence potential threats. The idea of the monarchy as an unseen architect of power becomes less romantic and more tangible when one considers that intelligence is not simply about knowing secrets, but about shaping events. Consider the Napoleonic era, when Britain's survival hung in the balance. Publicly, the government steered policy, but what private influence might the crown have exercised through its familial connections to other European dynasties? A letter from a British monarch to a German or Russian cousin, encouraging them to resist Napoleon, would not appear in parliamentary records but could be decisive in shaping alliances. In the same way, during the turbulent years of the 20th century, correspondence between Edward VIII and foreign leaders may have gone far beyond polite greetings. If any such documents survive, they would shed light on suspicions that he harbored sympathies that clashed with official policy. These kinds of secrets have consequences beyond mere embarrassment. They suggest that the monarchy was not simply a passive passenger in history, but an active driver of events, one whose influence was carefully hidden from public view to preserve the myth of neutrality. If archives show that royal opinions swayed wars, delayed reforms, or secured the exploitation of colonies, then the entire story of British history changes. Instead of a monarchy standing apart from politics, we would see a monarchy embedded in its very core, pulling levers from the shadows. Even more intriguing is the possibility of hidden agreements with foreign powers. Royal marriages linked Britain with numerous dynasties across Europe, and with those marriages came personal correspondence that could be both affectionate and political. A promise made in a private letter, a suggestion whispered at a family gathering, could ripple outward into state policy. These family ties were often presented as symbolic bonds of peace, but the archives may contain evidence of concrete deals struck behind closed doors. Such revelations would not only explain certain political moves that baffled historians, but would also demonstrate the monarchy's role as an informal but powerful diplomatic actor. The reach of the monarchy into colonial policy may also lie in those documents. When rebellions flared in distant lands, did governors report directly to the sovereign with appeals for guidance? Did monarchs give advice that contradicted the official stance of ministers? If so, the story of empire becomes not just one of government expansion, but of royal will shaping the fates of colonized peoples. For modern audiences, revelations of such involvement would not merely be academic curiosities, but sources of deep controversy, exposing the monarchy as complicit in policies of exploitation and oppression. Financial dealings also open questions about corruption. The archives may reveal loans granted to aristocrats who later supported royal policies, or investments hidden under the names of associates. Such arrangements would suggest that monarchy was not a disinterested institution, but one with personal stakes in political outcomes. A king profiting from colonial companies while claiming impartiality would undermine the very foundation of his moral authority. The pattern is clear. The unseen architects of power were not faceless bureaucrats alone, but members of the royal family themselves. By virtue of their position, they had access to information unavailable to others. They had influence over ministers who sought their favor, and they had the ability to communicate privately with foreign rulers in ways that bypassed official channels. The archives, if opened, would likely reveal a web of influence that stretches across wars, treaties, economies, and empires. The secrecy of the Windsor vaults is therefore not only about protecting family honor, but about preserving the myth that the monarchy was always above politics. To admit the extent of its hidden influence would challenge the very narrative of constitutional monarchy, a system built on the belief that sovereigns reign but do not rule. If documents prove otherwise, then the monarchy has, in truth, shaped events while claiming neutrality. Even in the modern age, suspicions linger. During the Cold War, did the Crown maintain private channels of communication with relatives in Eastern Europe, bypassing official policy? During decolonization, did monarchs secretly advise ministers on how to preserve influence, even as colonies gained independence? These questions remain unanswered, but the possibility that answers lie locked away sustains the fascination with the Windsor vaults. The greatest irony is that the monarchy's strength lies in symbolism. Yet its history may be filled with acts of very real power. Those acts, hidden away in locked rooms and sealed files, show that the crown was not just a symbol but a force, one whose influence continues to shape how we understand the past. To open those archives would be to reveal not just personal scandals and whispers of disgrace, but the architecture of an entire system of power that has operated in secret for centuries. And so the story continues, from disgrace to influence, from hidden heirs to hidden deals, from scandals of passion to strategies of empire. The Windsor vaults do not simply preserve history. They conceal a parallel history, one in which the monarchy is not passive but active, not merely ceremonial, but deeply involved in shaping the world we live in today. Until those vaults are opened, we can only imagine the extent of that influence. But imagination, once fueled by fragments and whispers, can be as powerful as truth itself, and the cracks in the facade remind us that nothing, not even centuries of secrecy, can remain hidden forever. The unseen architects of power remind us that the monarchy was never just a passive figurehead standing apart from politics, but a body with its hands quietly resting on the levers of history. If those vaults in Windsor conceal proof of hidden marriages, illegitimate heirs, covert financial dealings, or backroom diplomacy that reshaped the fate of nations, then we must ask the inevitable question: how much longer can those secrets be contained? For centuries, secrecy has been the crown's most reliable shield, but every shield eventually weakens. The world has changed, and so has the appetite for transparency. In the past, secrecy was easier to maintain. A locked box, a trusted archivist, and a network of loyal courtiers were enough to ensure that sensitive papers stayed buried. Newspapers might speculate, whispers might circulate in private clubs, but without documents, little could be proven. That era is fading. Today, digital access, investigative journalism, and a culture of openness press harder against the gates of Windsor. The notion that history belongs only to the few who guard it no longer sits comfortably with a public that expects accountability from all institutions, even those draped in crowns. Legislation itself has played a role in this shift. The United Kingdom has a freedom of information framework, but the monarchy has often been granted special exemptions. Official records of government eventually reach the public eye, but royal records remain sealed, sometimes indefinitely. Yet pressure grows with every passing decade. Scholars argue that history belongs to the people, not to a single family, no matter how illustrious. Campaigners point out that decisions made behind palace walls affected millions of lives, from colonial subjects to ordinary citizens at home. To keep such information permanently hidden is not merely secrecy. It is, in the eyes of many, a denial of democratic principles. Ethics lies at the heart of this debate. Is it ethical to withhold evidence of history simply to preserve the image of an institution? One argument suggests that the monarchy, as a living body, deserves privacy like any family. Another argues that because it is an institution funded and maintained by the state, its history is a matter of public right. This tension is not easily resolved, but it grows sharper as time moves on. Each new generation is less bound by the reverence of tradition and more inclined to demand honesty. The ethics extend beyond curiosity. If the archives hold proof that certain monarchs influenced wars, delayed reforms, or profited secretly from colonial expansion, then the people affected by those decisions, descendants of the colonized, families who lost loved ones in wars, have a moral claim to know the truth. To keep it hidden is to perpetuate injustice, to deny them the knowledge of how and why decisions were made that shaped their lives. Transparency, in this sense, becomes not just a matter of academic interest, but of justice itself. There is also the question of precedent. Other nations have faced their own reckonings with secret archives. In Europe, state documents once locked away have been opened to reveal complicity in atrocities, betrayals, and cover-ups. Painful as those revelations were, they allowed nations to confront their past honestly. The monarchy, however, continues to maintain its own separate standard. By withholding its archives indefinitely, it suggests that its image must be protected at all costs, even at the expense of historical truth. The longer this secrecy endures, the more suspicion it breeds. People imagine the worst, and imagination can often be harsher than reality. What if the hidden documents are less dramatic than people suppose? Even then, the act of concealment fuels the belief that something world-shattering must lie within. The vaults become less a repository of history and more a symbol of elitism, a reminder that some truths are considered too dangerous for ordinary people to see. In an age that prizes equality and openness, such symbolism can be corrosive. Yet it is possible that even within the sealed boxes, there are stories that could still reshape everything we think we know. Diaries that reveal monarchs doubted their own roles, letters that prove wars were encouraged by royal hands, financial ledgers showing hidden stakes in industries built on slavery or exploitation. All of these would carry consequences not just for how we view the past, but for how we judge the present. The monarchy survives by the strength of its narrative, continuity, dignity, and neutrality. To expose the full truth might fracture that narrative beyond repair. And so we are left with a paradox. The monarchy must preserve secrecy to survive, yet the longer it preserves secrecy, the more fragile its survival becomes. For secrecy itself erodes trust. The public begins to ask why an institution that claims to be the nation's symbol must hide so much from the nation it represents. What is so dangerous in the past that it cannot be faced openly? This question, whispered now, may one day demand a louder answer. Future generations of historians and citizens may not accept permanent closure. Campaigns for transparency grow stronger as the culture of deference wanes. Already, there are movements urging the release of correspondence between monarchs and ministers, correspondence that could reveal how often the crown truly influenced policy. Courts have occasionally forced partial disclosures, and each small victory encourages further demands. It may be that the Windsor vaults cannot remain sealed forever, not because monarchs choose to open them, but because society eventually insists upon it. If that day comes, the consequences will be profound. Untold stories lying dormant in uncatalogued boxes could reshape entire eras of history. Perhaps we will discover that certain monarchs were far more engaged in politics than we believed, shaping decisions that cost lives or altered the path of empires. Perhaps we will uncover evidence of forgotten heirs, sidelined for the sake of convenience. Perhaps we will find proof that scandals whispered for centuries were in fact true. Or perhaps we will find truths no one has yet imagined, details so unexpected they rewrite not just our view of monarchy, but our understanding of the nation itself. The ethics of withholding this information are clear to many. History belongs to everyone. Yet the monarchy's argument for secrecy also carries weight. To expose every private thought of every sovereign could reduce the crown to the level of ordinary politics, stripping it of the mystique that allows it to function as a unifying symbol. The institution does not survive on legality alone. It survives on perception, and perception is fragile. The revelation of too much truth might destroy the very fabric of tradition. Still, secrecy is not eternal. Papers hidden today may surface tomorrow, whether through accident, betrayal, or eventual release. A forgotten cache in a private home, an archivist's slip, a scholar stumbling on a misfiled letter. Any of these can undo centuries of careful concealment. History is resilient. It insists on being known. And when it emerges, even in fragments, it invites questions that cannot easily be silenced. The future of royal secrecy, then, is uncertain. It may endure for decades, protected by legal barriers and institutional control. But it may also unravel, slowly or suddenly, under the weight of modern expectations. What was once possible in an age of deference is far harder in an age of transparency. The longer the vaults remain sealed, the more powerful their mystery becomes, and the stronger the eventual shock will be when the truth is revealed. The archives of Windsor symbolize the tension between myth and reality. They remind us that monarchy is not just crowns and ceremonies, but people, choices, and secrets. They also remind us that history cannot be controlled forever. Each generation demands its own reckoning with the past, and one day, whether by design or by accident, the vaults may open. When they do, the stories hidden within could alter not only how we view those who came before, but how we judge the institution that continues to exist today. Perhaps the greatest untold story is not of a hidden heir or a secret deal, but of the very act of concealment itself. What does it say about monarchy that it must hide so much? What does it say about us that we continue to allow it? These questions cannot be locked away. They grow louder with each passing year, pressing against the sealed doors of Windsor, demanding answers that no vault can contain forever. And so the story of royal secrecy moves forward, not as a closed chapter, but as a living question. The archives remain, vast and silent, filled with truths we can only imagine. Yet even in their silence, they speak. They tell us that power is never only in the open, that history is never only what is written in textbooks, and that the crown, for all its ceremony, rests not only on tradition but on secrets hidden in shadow. The future may bring light into those shadows, and when it does, the monarchy as we know it may never be the same again.